Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our open book. Very good to be with you tonight. We're joined by Nancy Kricorian, who has just begun her book tour. A very tough and moving novel that just come out, The Burning Heart of the World, which is a novel about a Beirut Armenian family before, during, and after Lebanon civil war. And it ranges between um, really all over the world, Lebanon and New York. And Nancy joins us now from Los Angeles. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much. I love to be here and chat with you about the book.
It's a very personal story for you, isn't it?
Um, I've written, this is my fourth novel that's about post-genocide Armenian diaspora experience. And the first one was a fictionalized account of my grandmother's life as a genocide survivor and immigrant bride. The second one was about someone of my generation growing up on under the shadow of this unspoken sort of community trauma. And the third one, I went afield and went to Paris and wrote about Armenians in Paris during the Nazi occupation. And this one is about Armenians in Beirut during the Civil War. I did not personally live that experience, but I went to Beirut and interviewed probably 40 people who had lived that and read probably 80 books, and then interviewed more people in the States who had fled Beirut during the Civil War. So I try to build an immersive world that's based in story, like history, and also in the stories that people tell me, but then I sort of weave it together into a fiction.
I mean, part of what holds the novel together is the idea that there's no statute of limitations on trauma, is there? One sort of aggravates the other. The experience in Armenia, the experience in Lebanon, and then I find your chapters about 9/11 to be absolutely gripping. I think I made a note. What is it? Didn't we left Beirut to get away from this kind of craziness, and here it is falling on our heads again.
I know. I mean, that's sadly the Armenian experience, where there are these sort of multiple layers of trauma and intergenerational transmission of the trauma. So, and people, it's almost like the echoes of past trauma are, reverberate in the present when something like 9/11 happens. I mean, part of what interested me in that was I had a lot of Lebanese Armenian friends, and I was in New York on 9/11 myself, and they were all saying that they were all having nightmares of the Civil War.
Yeah. How did you recapture that period of the Civil War? Because all the thundering and the thudding, your descriptions are precise and pointed and detailed.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I read a lot of books, I read a lot of books, I watched a lot of films, I talked to a lot of people, I even listened to recordings. I mean, that's the crazy thing about YouTube now, is you can like put in the type of weapon you want to hear and find a recording of it on YouTube. And then I would listen to it and try to think about how to describe it.
My God, how have I done that?
You can find anything. Even in this book, the father is a
Yeah.
lathe operator, and so I got online and watched videos of how to turn a spoon, on a lathe, just so I would know that.
Tell us about Vera, who tells this story. We meet her as a teen.
Yeah, the novel is in sort of four parts, and it doesn't go in chronological order. There's a prologue where Vera is, I would guess, 8 years old, up in Mount Lebanon, and witnessing this sort of bird hunting in
Yeah,
the mountains. Then it goes back to 9/11, when she's probably in her early 30s and has
two children
two
herself.
children herself who are in kindergarten, and her experience of 9/11. And then
I must say the description on 9/11, it's going back and forth between the towers falling and the juice box spilling, is extraordinary.
thank you. I was calling on all my memories of having young children, and actually
Mhm.
what my young kids were doing at that time. And then Vera starts to sort of come undone, emotionally undone during 9/11. And then we go back and see what had happened to her between the ages of 10 and 15 in Lebanon during the Civil War. And then at the very end, there's another shift in time and in location, and it goes back to the town in the that the family, the grandmother, has come from, and you get the narrative of what happened to her during the Armenian genocide.
Yeah. Tell us about the differences that we observe between Vera and her mother. Her mother,
Yeah.
who's seen it all, Vera, well, I'll let you describe it.
Well, I mean, the thing, I talked to a lot of people, both who had been mothers and who had been children during the Civil War, and their perspectives were very different. Some of the people that I talked to who had been children were saying, "Oh, it was so much fun. When there'd be bombing, they'd cancel school, and we got to go to the bomb shelter and play with our friends." Now, if you were a parent, you would not. That would not be a way you would
Yeah.
describe that situation. And I think that there's a temperamental difference between these two characters. The mother is very tough and, and I think there's a lot of anger in her about what's going on. Like why, this terrible war that's going on around them. And she's furious at the men who are making it happen. And then we have Vera, her daughter, who has such a different temperament. She's just like sort of, her heart is open to the world, to the world's suffering. And so she's constantly, she sees things and is so disturbed by them. She sees something terrible happen at a checkpoint where a man is being brutalized by militiamen, and she's weeping, and her mother's saying to her, "You can't cry for the whole world, Vera." And Vera thinks, "But of course, yes, I can cry for the whole world."
Yeah, that's another one of the lines I wrote down. Um, why do we tell stories like this over and over? And in fact, in your work, you've done that.
Um, I think for me, I mean, because these stories happen over and over. I mean, you can look around what's happening in the world right now, and I know I have friends, I have young people in Gaza that I am a literary mentor for who are living this experience. So it's not what I always think in my work is, it's a human experience, this kind of mass violence and trauma. It's not a humane experience. And I'm interested in exploring how it is in the face of this kind of violence that families, communities, nations are, find the strength and manage to live through these things and then rebuild their lives after them. So I feel like I inherited an interest in that from having heard my grandmother's stories
Yeah.
of her experience during what she didn't call it genocide, she called it deportations and massacres.
Mm.
So
And I'm struck again when you talk about about the family. It's not easy, the decision to leave, is it? Not what
no,
people think.
no. And there's a line that, that the grandmother says in the book
Yeah.
when the family's finally, the mother can't take it anymore and is insisting that they leave, and they're going to go to New Jersey. They're going to, and Vera's trying to convince her grandmother to come with her, and her grandmother says, "Exile is a burning shirt I will never wear again."
Yeah.
And so that's really heartbreaking because the grandmother doesn't want to be uprooted. She doesn't want to give up her home. She doesn't want to give up this, where she has recreated this whole community and this life for herself. But then just the heartbreak of leaving her behind for Vera and for the rest of the family. So, but you see this happening, I mean, this is kind of heartbreak and families torn apart by this kind of communal violence is happening constantly in the world.
Without giving anything away, can you tell us about the three apples?
Oh, yeah. So the last
I guess
chapter of the
people who
book,
know the story will know about the three apples, but I am referring
yeah,
to that.
yeah. So the last chapter of the book is an Armenian folk tale that has magical elements to it, and there are birds woven all through the entire text. The birds are a big theme, and
And
I
Vera
read
loves birds. Yes, yes.
yeah, and I read about, I don't know, 50 or 60 Armenian folk tales because I wanted to be able to get the cadence of that kind of storytelling and the atmosphere. And those stories, there's a formula where they start where it says Gar Uchagar, which means there was and there was not. So it's the Armenian equivalent of Once Upon a Time. And then at the end of the story, there's a formula, and it can vary slightly, but the way that I put it in, here is Three apples fell from heaven, one for the storyteller, one for the listener, and one for the person who understands this tale. So it's just that formula of, there was not, and then three apples fell from heaven, which is sort of standard in Armenian folk and fairy tales.
You've been all three in your life, haven't you?
Yes, exactly. And sometimes simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm saying good luck.
Thank you. Thank you
good-
for your
good luck.
careful reading, and thank you for your interest.
Nancy Kricorian, The Burning Heart of the World. Hope I'm holding it in the right place. And we will say to the people who join us every night, we're trying another technical platform tonight. Let us know if it works. We've been trying to engineer between platforms for all the obvious reasons, and it looks good on our end. You let us know how it is on your end. So thanks very much, everybody, for being with us in our open book, and particularly thanks to our great guest, Nancy Kricorian. Take care. See you later.
Bye.